Before commencing the formal address, Professor Woo-Soo Kim from Simon Fraser University will provide an overview of the APRU Food Security Working Group and the webinar series. Please welcome Professor Kim.
Thank you, Ming-Ju. Thank you, everyone, for participating in this webinar series today, co-hosted by the National University of Taiwan and the University of Adelaide. So I have a role today, about 5 minutes, to provide the overview of APRU on behalf of Chief Executive Professor Thomas Schneider, and giving the information about our working group on that APRU food security, right? So yeah, I'm Woo-Soo Kim from Simon Fraser University in Canada. So please go on to next slide. Yes. So many of you may know already. So APRU is the Association of the Pacific Rim Universities. Basically, the around 62 leading research universities in 20 economies of Asia Pacific. So including starting from Australia, Canada, China, right, Japan, Korea, New Zealand, Singapore, USA, right? So I'm not saying all, but the major national universities around this Asia Pacific. So next page, please. So APRU focus on the key research related. Could you go back to the previous slide? Yeah, so the APRU focus on the key research-related programs, and for one Pacific challenges. So there are multiple, right, the challenges, and there are multiple kind of programs focused on, and you can see how the APRU contributed to the UN's Sustainable Development, right? There's a relative impact index. You can see in the middle, it's a little bit small visual, but how APRU contribute to all around this sustainable development, right? The goals. So you can find out how APRU focus really on those research solutions. So among them, our working group as food security is one of highlighted, right? The research part. So can you go to the next slide? Next slide, please. Yes. So again, the previous slide, please. Yes. So objective of the APRU Food Security Webinar Series in 2024, we focus on the precision agriculture and food shelf life extension. Both topics are really important for regional solutions in the climate, in order to enhance the climate resilience. So the working group decided to focus on these two. So from first webinar in February, and today's the second webinar in May, and then third webinar in June. We focus on these two topics mainly, and webinar series can pilot to identify if there's any interest and scope to develop a network of cross-disciplinary experts. And it is a really good platform to share insights on these two topics. And next steps after this webinar series can be to determine the degree of interest to develop this into an impactful and collaborative network of academics, and assess the capacity needs and the area of mutual interest. So once again, thank you for participating in these interesting webinars. So the two splendid speakers lined up today, and looking forward to the talks on these two topics. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Professor Kings. Through his introduction, I think we can more understand what is the purpose of these webinars. And he's in Africa right now, and right now it's midnight. So thank you very much again. And now I will introduce our moderator, Dr. Matthew Knowling, from the School of Agriculture, Food and Wine at the University of Adelaide. Dr. Knowling specializes in computer models and data analytics. Utilize these tools to assist farmers, business, and policymakers in optimizing resource management during uncertainties. Now I will hand over this section to Dr. Knowling, who will introduce our first speaker. Let's welcome Dr. Knowling.
Thank you very much, Professor Ming-Ju Chen, for that warm welcome. So welcome everyone. And first I'd like to start with an acknowledgement to country. So I'd like to acknowledge that I'm moderating this webinar today from the lands of the Kaurna people, the traditional custodians of the Adelaide Plains, and the land on which the University of Adelaide's campuses are built. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which our Australian participants here today work, and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people participating in this webinar. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and relationship of the Kaurna people to country, and we respect and value their past, present, and ongoing connection to the land and cultural beliefs. Okay, so now I'd like to introduce our first speaker today, Dr. Shih-Fang Chen. Dr. Chen is an associate professor in the Department of Biomechatronics Engineering at National Taiwan University. Her research focuses on applying image processing and spectral techniques to monitor plant status and evaluate quality. Before I hand over to Dr. Chen for her presentation, I'd just like to remind everyone to please post your questions or comments on Dr. Chen's presentation using the chat or Q&A function. We will go to Q&A directly after Dr. Chen's presentation. So I'd now like to hand over to Dr. Chen. Please welcome her. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Knowling. Hello, everyone. Let me share my screen. Okay. Good morning, everyone. It's my great pleasure to have this opportunity to share my research result with everyone. In this presentation, I'm going to share several cases developed by our group through some AI application. For this webinar, we are talking about some of the precision agriculture and also like a food security problem. So in my part, I am going to introduce more aspects related to the precision agriculture. Okay. We all know now we are facing a lot of challenges in our agriculture production, such as like increasing population and also like the huge climate changes. And another side is also we are short of the labor force to do the routine agriculture routine works. So those poses a great challenge to us for the food production, and also the resources are very limited. So how can we wisely to use those limited resources is what we should put more focus on. And we had a great opportunity to apply those technologies to do or develop some tools to help the agricultural farming and to save some labor and make all production more efficient. So here we can see when we talk about precision agriculture, actually it appears decades ago. The precision agriculture talks about how can we efficiently to use our resources in those parts that we need, such as like how many pesticide, how many fertilizer, and then what's a plant really needs. That's like originally we would like to use like a precision agriculture to give a proper amount of those resources to our plant or to our agricultural products. And in recent years, we had more computer algorithm that we could use integrated with those machines. Then because now we know as a smart agriculture or digital agriculture, we integrated those technologies such as the Internet of Things, the sensor modules, and also we could use those sensors to collect a lot of data. Those data could be analyzed and also combined with expert experience to become more useful, and also to develop maybe like a automatic system or expert system to help the agricultural farming and also manage those farms in a more efficient way. So here in this slides, we can see we had like a different layer to use like a different level of data or technology. So from the very basic one, from the bottom, we have a different field of application. And on those fields, we could use different type of sensing technologies, such as humidity, temperature, camera, UAV. And we use like the Wi-Fi or like a LoRa or Bluetooth, different type of like a connection or like a transmission to transmit our data. Those data becomes useful data because like we will link them to the expert know-how and then to develop an algorithm and to help the farmer to do the decision. And in this webinar, I am going to share several cases that we trying to collaborate with farmer and also expert to develop those tools from farm aspect to the market or consumer need. So from the farm part on your left-hand side, I will talk about some tools that we developed for those stages from the production and also harvest stage. So in this stage, mostly we focus on to monitor how the plant grows. Is it healthy or it needs a special care? And towards the harvesting time point, then we need to know when will be the best time to do the harvesting, and then where should we do the harvest. And after the harvest, then we go to a post-harvest process. This product is going to be sent to maybe like the market or to the consumer side. And here we also use like one of the popular drinks, coffee as an example. We're using also data science to develop an algorithm to predict the flavor in those beverages. Okay, so let's go into those cases then I'm going to share with you. So the first one is from the production stages. So in these stages, we would like to make sure our plant will grow healthily, or if there is anything happen, we can detect that in time and then take some action to prevent the losses. So usually we can observe those abnormal situations by the farmers scouting field process. They will see like some dots or like some yellow part or any abnormal lesion on the leaf surface. However, some of those disease may look very similar, so they might not be able to tell which is which and what's the action they should take. So the best way is to have an expert to provide some suggestion. So that's like plant doctors, and plant doctors could provide their suggestion and also to tell them how to do the next step. However, those profession is not that many. So the real professions may not fit the huge demand. So in these cases, we would like to develop some tools to help identify those diseases in the first line. So we could identify those simple cases for them. And then if there are some difficult cases, then we pass that to the plant doctors. So we could save those labor force. And also to provide some suggested prescription for them to take action. In these cases, we collect or we apply this technology to 2 or 3 different crops. One is tea, because tea is a very important economic crops in Taiwan. So that's one of our target. And second one is a cucumber, or we say also apply to the melon disease. So these 2 are our main target. And for my colleague, they also develop another plant doctor system for the tomatoes. So here we do this system by collecting all types of disease images in the first step. So we collect the images from different area in Taiwan to make sure we can collect as many disease or pests as possible, and then also from different scenario. So we could have a wide range of the data set and to generalize our model training. And the next part, I just using the T disease identification system as an example. We use like a different convolution neural network as our backbone to do the feature extraction. And then by using that, we could develop a model to distinguish those disease or pests. So on your right-hand side, we can see like those numbers around like 14 categories that we have right now. And so for right now, we can achieve around like 77 to 80% average precision. All those photos are taken on the field. So basically they come with a very complex background, but the more practical the scenario. So here we can see the real cases, because agriculture field is quite complicated, and then the variation is very huge, such as like the illumination from the morning to the evening is quite different, and sometimes it's going to rain, sometimes it's going to overlap with each other. There are some shadows. We are not sure what we will encounter. So we have to collect as many as possible photos on the different scenario. And if we would like to provide this to the user, we even need to consider how the user are going to use our tool. So they are going to using their phone to taking a shot, and they may have using different angles to taking the photo. So we also trying to taking photo from different view and to develop our system. And here we can see, after we develop the model, we would like to give this service to the user. So the best way for this service will be to using like the chatbot. So Line is a very popular chatbot in Taiwan. Basically, the Line is similar function as a WhatsApp. So the user just upload their photos to this chatbot, and chatbot will send the photo to our server for identification, and then they will do the judgment to say like what type of the photo will be. So here we can see to upload the photo and then to do the diagnostic. And after to do the diagnostic, then they can click on those pest or disease name. Then it will direct them to another website, which is provided by the government. The government website is a plant protection information system to provide some treatment suggestion, and then how could they do action or to do the dilution for the pesticide. So that's like how do we do that? But actually, for the most plant disease identification system, mostly they will stop at the identification part just to recognize what type of disease appears in the photo. However, if there is a real plant doctor there, they will say like what to do for next step. And if there are multiple diseases happening there, they will provide even a better suggestion. Like if there are two diseases, it's not necessary to use maybe like two different pesticides. Probably there are some common pesticide that they can choose, so they don't need to waste the pesticide and can limit the use for the drugs. So based on that idea, we collaborate with expert to develop our, we develop our smart prescription system. And this system will connect with those drug database. And if there are multiple diseases happening, we will list those common drugs as prioritize those common drugs on the list, so they could choose them first. And second one is we also list the safe harvesting period based on like the time. The shorter will list the first, so they can have this suggestion. And also not only to provide those chemical suggestion, also provide the cultivation control and the biological control information for them to use. This is the first cases that I would like to share. We also, to promote the system to the tea farmer and also the plant doctors in Taiwan and get their feedback to revise or like to improve our system. And second one is going to be introduced like one monitoring system to combine with the autonomous vehicle and also image processing. Here is an example for greenhouse asparagus production. I believe like in Australia or like in US, Germany, for the asparagus growth, you will see on your left-hand side, it's all growth for the spear, the younger spears. However, in Taiwan or in Japan, because our weather is hotter, so we need to use a very special cultivation method, which names like a mother stalk cultivation. We will let the young spear to grow to become the mother stalk and then to develop the leaves so they can do the photosynthesis, and photosynthesis provide more nutrient for the new spear to grow, to provide enough nutrient there. So that's how we do our asparagus cultivation. But in this way, we will see the scenario become much more complicated. So here on your right-hand side, we will see the farm will kind of like a little bit messy because it mix up the mother stalk and also the young spear together. So if we would like to do the automatic monitoring, then we have to identify which is which first. For the human laborers, they have to scouting their field very frequently. So they pose like a huge challenge there. So by this way, we would like to develop an autonomous system that can do the scouting task for them to release their labor. And by using this autonomous system, then we have to develop the way to guide them, the vehicle by itself, and also to taking the photo from the both sides and then to monitor how the plant grows. From the both sides, to recognize like how many stalks are there and how many spear we have. If we have those information, then we can provide them to the farmer and then making it as a map for the management system. So the farmers can see those information from the website or from their pad. For the recognition part, we're using like a different model to see which one get a better for in the first stage, we using the RCM method, and then recently, then we apply the transformer models. So obviously we can see the transformer model, the masked dino give us a better performance. So all the stalk and also spear can be recognized better. And here is our user interface. In this user interface, the farmer can check how many objects are observed on their farm. And on the left-hand side, they can select the interested zone to check how they grow. So the vehicle will go in through their farm and then do the scouting job. Once they get the photo, it will show different colors and they record that day by day. And then they can use this website to monitor that. And then to see the recognition result. And on your right-hand side, then they will show like which loan it is, and then how many stalk and spear showing up in this spot. So by using this, they can save their time and also labor, and just allow the machine to help them to manage the farm, and then knows like which spot may have like a harvestable asparagus, or like which side grows higher density. So they can also apply variable spraying or variable fertilizer to make those management more efficiently. And the last cases then I would like to introduce is to do the flavor prediction for specialty coffee. Previous two cases, we basically based on the image processing and then to apply the deep learning method to the image processing. And for this one, we are trying also use the algorithm, but using that on the spectroscopy data. So here we using like a near infrared data. And later on, we also use that for the GC-MOS data. For the specialty coffee, which is very popular drinks because it hold a very rich flavors. However, usually when we judge like the product quality, we will need like a certified cuppers to do the cupping. That's also very professional way to do that, but we don't have that many of the profession. So in the cases, if we can develop a tool, then we could give those like a cupping report more easily, and then also to provide those product information to the market or to the consumer. So we using the near infrared to connect with like the copper report from the certified copper, and then use like an algorithm to do the prediction. And in addition to the near infrared, we also can use that the GC-MOS data to do that, and then use the machine learning and deep learning method to develop the link between each other. So in the result, we can see we could do the 9 category of the flavor prediction. Basically, the 9 category is based on the coffee flavor wheel, the inner part of the coffee flavor wheel. And for now, we are expanded to the 21 flavors to provide a more comprehensively flavor category. And on your right-hand side, we also try to see like what would be the feature or attention area to capture those flavor, and then what would be the composition between them to contribute to that. And by the model, after the model, we can develop a tool for the monkey or like the coffee vendor to use, and they can use this to do their prediction or to mark their product information. And also same thing to do this with like a GC data. So the GC data will also to be developed for different type of flavor, and then to extract their features to identify which is the more key component to contribute to certain category of flavors. So that's basically all the results, then I would like to share with you, like from the fun part and then to a little bit to the market part. Yeah, so that's my presentation. I would like to thank my research group and also the funding agency and this opportunity to share those research with you. Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Dr. Chen, for that wonderful presentation. I notice we have one, we'll give people a little bit more time. There's one question that's already been posted for you by Gary Jones. It seems that you've already actually answered it, but maybe we'll get you to expand on his original question. So there's an assumption that the remedy prescription offers pesticides, and so this means chemical pesticides or synthetic pesticides. Are you also building in biological control options? So this is on the production examples that you were explaining at the start.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Knowling, and also thank you for Gary's question. Yes, we do consider that, so we also provide those options for the biological control and also for cultivation control. Those are collaborated with plant doctors. So the plant doctor, they will have their suggestion and then what would be the option to use instead of the chemical pesticide. We also incorporate that in our system so the user have those choices to do that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So while we're waiting for some other questions to come through, I have a question about data requirements for the type of models that you're describing. So we've spoken about images to go into deep learning, and then also spectroscopy data to go into deep learning models as well. So, Dr. Chen, could you please comment on your experience regarding, the amount of data required for these models to be robust, or the consistency in data framework or structure for these models to be robust? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Matt. It's an excellent question, and I had this question many times because we all concerned about how many is enough, especially when we would like to using deep learning models. Actually, the numbers still case by cases. That depends on the complexity of the problem itself. If those features are quite different from each other, maybe we don't really need a huge number of the data. What I mean, not a huge number of data means maybe hundreds is enough. But if those are quite similar, then we may need to have thousands or more than thousands to build our own models. So for our past disease identification models, we developed that year by year because we couldn't collect all the information in the very beginning. So in the very beginning, we might only have a couple hundreds photos, and then we develop a small scale of that, and then we may just get maybe 60% of the average precision at that time, and then later on we increase the number by collecting more and also collect them from different years to enlarge the database and also the variation to generalize whole data set. And then now we have around 4,000 to 5,000. Actually, this number is not very big, but actually we can see the model get kind of stabilized. And then before you are seeing the accuracy or average precision is around 80%. I would say for now, my own experience, 80% is quite acceptable because the real case condition is quite complicated. And then also for the plant doctor, they also had like some gray area to say this is A or B. So when we using our own model to provide to the farmers, when they really use that, they can find there is like the same result if they test like a 5 or 10 photos, maybe 4 or 8 photos are correctly identified. They won't have a huge difference there because some of the development were using a much simple background as their data set. However, if we're using this way, when we to provide their service to the farmers, they will have a different story and then will have different performance like that. So that's still case by cases, but I would say hundreds, thousands, or tens of thousands, depends.
That's excellent. Thank you for such a comprehensive answer there. I think the case-by-case basis for that data requirement is critical, but also I really like the way you've incorporated experts into your systems, so that allows you to actually have less data for those more complex problems because you're searching into spaces that the data can't do itself. Very good. So we have a couple more questions coming in now. So the first is, how long does it take to establish such conclusive models? Or how long does it take to implement this kind of research? And we also have another excellent question after that. So if I could get you to answer that one in a minute or so, Dr. Chen, that'd be great.
Okay. It's my experience is for the plant disease identification system for the T1, we developed that for 4 years, more than 4 years, actually maybe 4 to 6 years to collect different type of disease because different years, different climate, different disease. So if we want to collect as many as possible, then it takes time. And then for the cucumber one, we take maybe 3 years, and then we have one assistant to do the full-time job to collect the image, and then also to collaborate with the expert to do the identification, because we need to have the data first, and then we do the annotation to label the data, and then go into the model session. So I would say if you already have a comprehensive data set, then it's much easier. But usually the difficulty is to collect the data in an efficient way or like in effective way, because sometimes we have a huge data set, but they may not to be all effective data. So that's very important to make sure we have like the correct data to fit into our model for the training, and then enough effective data. So based on my experience, I would say if that's a service to provide to the farmer, at least probably 2 years, 3 years to make sure you collect enough and then also wide enough data to develop the models.
Excellent. Very good.
Yeah.
And so we've got 2 minutes remaining, and we've got 2 questions on adoption at the grower farmer end. So what has been your experience? You mentioned the long process in actually the development of these models, but I guess we're curious to hear about the adoption at the farmer end, noting that, adoption of ag tech in Australia has been, limited today in some respects. So just a comment on that, Dr. Chen.
Thank you. Actually, the farmers, the older farmers usually not accept. They do not accept the new technology that easy. They usually will think like we just depends on our experience. It is enough. So they need to see some successful example from maybe like younger farmers. So basically, younger farmers had like more willingness to try that. So we will try to collaborate with those young farmers first, and they usually are very welcome us to try. And once they have like some successful story, and then we can promote that to some workshop and also some gathering occasion, let other farmers knowing about that. And also, like before I talk about, I promote that to the farmer and also to the plant doctor. So the plant doctor group will also promote this system to those farmers when they do their daily job. So they help us to provide this service to the farmers. So the farmers do give us like some feedback, like they will find some bug in our system, finding some category that we don't have right now. So we could know like what we can improve for the next step. And then we also trying to use those upload image to update our system or make our identification better. That's another way that we can collect more data. So the farmer basically need some time to accept that. So we just are trying to collaborate for to those had more interest in the first step, and then to spread that later. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chen, and thank you again for such a wonderful presentation and the participation from the audience as well. Thank you very much. So I'd like to pass back to Professor Ming-Ju Chen now to introduce our next speaker for today.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Knowling and Dr. Chen. I still, there's one more question there. Maybe you can go up to answer the question. Okay, please. Yeah, and I will moderate for the second speaker, Dr. Matthew Wilson from the University of Adelaide. Dr. Wilson is a senior lecturer renowned for his expertise in food quality and preservation, horticulture, new crop development, plant physiology, and sustainability. Today, Dr. Wilson will introduce his study on sensory tools to enhance food shelf life evaluation. Let's welcome Dr. Wilson.
Thank you so much, Professor Chen, and welcome everybody. As Professor Chen said, I'm Matt Wilson from the University of Adelaide, and today I will be discussing the topic of how we can use sensory tools to improve food shelf life evaluation and the role that this could potentially play in advancing food security. So first of all, a bit of an introduction to sensory tools and why I think that they are an important thing that we should be considering going forward. One of the key things to note here is that over the last 10 years or so, there's been a huge change in both the availability of these sensory technologies, but also their quality, their precision, their reliability, and their accessibility from a cost point of view as well. In general, the cost of these tools is decreasing all the time, even as they get more powerful and more useful. So where we're seeing differences in the time required to assess samples, the cost per sample involved, the precision that we can receive from the machines, their consistency and reliability. Dr. Chen has already discussed in the previous talk about how AI can be used to help predict coffee flavor. And in this presentation, I'll be discussing some other examples of how we can use sensory evaluation of foods using modern methods and how that could help with food security. Because this improvements in the availability, the accuracy of analytical equipment already allows for more efficient, consistent, and reliable evaluation of foods from a sensory point of view. And so increasingly, there's an opportunity to actually realize these advances for use in improving outcomes for food security. And the goal of today's presentation really is to sort of create a discussion around these different possibilities, how they could be utilized for advancing food security, how we could, for example, if we compare human sensory approaches, the traditional approach, which while very useful as a true indication of human experience, can be subjective, can be ineffective or inefficient, doesn't always sort of transfer from one panel to another or from one year to another, and can have some potential issues in terms of analysing food that might not be safe, to instead do these sorts of tests that would traditionally have been run that way using instrumental approaches, which, despite having higher capital costs and sometimes difficulty in relating back that to the results back to specific human experiences, do have considerable advantages in terms of reliability, high throughput, etc. So the aim for today, firstly, I'd like to introduce some of the modern sensory assessment tools that we have, how we use them, why we use them. And then I'd like to talk about some recent work that I've been involved in, which where we've actually used modern approaches to understand both quality and sensory appeal aspects of foods, to better understand the safety, sustainability, and human experience outcomes for food systems using these approaches. And I'd like to end the presentation by just having a quick rundown of some of the facilities we have here at the UOA, the University of Adelaide, which can be used for these types of trials. So what are these new technologies I'm talking about? And here I've sort of grouped them into three broad categories, though there'd be other ways of doing this. And so the main categories I've considered, our main focus today will be on different types of electronic sensors. So these include things like electronic tongues, electronic noses, GCMS, as Dr. Chen previously discussed, and other tools with sort of high precision monitoring of usually chemical, but also other changes within foods. Usually these are associated with quite high capital costs. They're usually quite expensive pieces of machinery to begin with. And they do require, an element of training to use them. However, we can compensate for this by the high throughput and the consistency and reliability of results that they produce. Other new technology approaches include different ways of monitoring sort of consumer perceptions and approaches to foods. So we can use things like eye tracking software, which you can sort of see in the photo there. Which parts of a food label, for example, are consumers most attracted to? But also things like facial recognition approaches. Can we sort of test in real time the actual expression that someone has when they consume a food? Is that more likely, for example, to be a true reflection of their opinion of that food than when they sort of self-filter, when they answer a written survey in their own time? And lastly, another growing category is various uses of both virtual and augmented reality. We can use this to sort of simulate real-world conditions in the eyes of the panelists undergoing these sensory trials, while still actually being able to control the experiments under lab conditions. So, for example, trying different beers under the white lights, under the sort of control conditions of a sensory lab might not be a very authentic sort of way of really understanding what we enjoy when we have a beer. But if we could use virtual or augmented reality to sort of create the environment of a pub or a bar, perhaps that would enhance the reality of what we perceive when we consume that food. So a few different approaches I'd like to go through now. I'm already in this seminar series back in the February session with Simon Fraser University and University of California, Davis. We saw a really nice presentation on, which went into some depth on why shelf life determination is important for food security in terms of preventing food loss and waste. So I won't go into that so much today. Instead, I'll take that sort of as assumed knowledge that we know that by being able to understand the shelf life of foods, we can have a better understanding of how long we can sort of store these foods, or which approaches are most effective to store these foods for longer while keeping them acceptable for consumers. And I think there's real value in using some of these modern sensory tools I'm talking about in terms of understanding the true shelf life from a sensory point of view for these different foods. And so today I'd like to talk about a recent trial I conducted on meat quality and safety degradation, which is sort of comparing sensory shelf life with microbial shelf life, because shelf life is governed both by food safety and also sensory properties. Obviously, we can't eat foods that are no longer safe, but too often perhaps we throw out foods because we are concerned that they have lost their sensory appeal. And when we set, for example, best before dates, perhaps we could be more accurate and store foods for longer if we had a better understanding of that true sensory shelf life. So in this meat shelf life trial, we try to determine more accurately the end of shelf life of meat products. Usually, the shelf life of meat products is determined both by using microbial techniques, so plating, culturing the samples, counting CFUs per gram, colony forming units per gram, but also odor testing, using often a small trained panel of up to 5 people who monitor the intensity of the odor. And from that, we can sort of roughly determine how long that meat will be acceptable to consumers. But in this trial, we wanted to find out, could instrumental approaches actually allow for more accurate prediction and determination of shelf life? And so here are some of the results. So this is from the first trial we did, where we stored minced beef or ground beef at 3 different temperatures for up to 15 days. We conducted microbial testing, GCMS analysis of volatiles, and also an E-tongue evaluation of taste every 5 days over that 15-day period. And the results are probably something around the lines of what we would expect. Here I've presented some of that taste data, and we can see that the meat stored at 10 degrees, which would be regarded as an abuse temperature, above a desirable storage temperature for this product. The meat was clearly more sour, but however less bitter, and having less umami than meat stored at a usual refrigeration temperature of around 2 degrees or a freezing temperature of -20. So we would expect, obviously, at a higher temperature, more spoilage organisms to grow, and for sourness levels to increase with that spoilage due to fermentation, especially from lactic acid bacteria. The decline in umami taste was also important to note, because this is a major quality concern. High savory intensity, represented by that umami factor, is characteristic of the desirable meaty flavor profile that we would expect in a meat product. Traditionally, though, this type of storage was thought to evoke a bitter taste due to the accumulation of different microbial metabolites, especially volatile fatty acids. But we did not actually find this in our study. And one of the advantages of using a sensory approach like this with instrumental tools is that we're actually able to get a true understanding of the taste profile of the food without actually exposing anyone to sort of eating the meat products, because it would probably be a little bit unfair to expect someone to eat a meat product that had been stored at 10 degrees for 15 days. Also, by combining the GCMS and the E-tongue approaches, we were able to sort of relate some of the development of specific volatiles, such as acetic acid, butanoic acid, with sourness tastes as well. A second angle to this study was actually deliberately inoculating the meat with a key foodborne pathogen, E. coli, as well as a known spoilage bacteria for vacuum-packed meats, Carnibacterium malta rheumaticum. This trial was only conducted at the 1 temperature, for a refrigeration temperature of around 2 degrees. And over the 12 days of testing, we observed no significant differences in the taste over that time, independent of whether or not we had inoculated those samples. And this actually might be something that we would expect, because from an evolutionary point of view, it might be logical to hypothesize that there would be no evolutionary advantage for the E. coli to have a detectable taste, because if it did have a strong taste, perhaps we would be less likely to consume the food containing the E. coli, thus preventing it from sort of completing its infection of us. And so this is sort of a powerful example of how we can use these sorts of modern sensory tools, because certainly we wouldn't be able to get a tasting panel to taste meat that had been deliberately inoculated with a foodborne pathogen like this. Another angle that we can use modern sensory tools for evaluation of foods is to assess the sustainability of different options. Because Ultimately, we aim to be able to use quality assessments to help with understanding which sort of potentially more sustainable food systems might be acceptable to consumers, and therefore to speed up the process of selecting worthwhile avenues of more sustainable food systems to explore further. Because even, for example, if we find that a new food system is more sustainable way to produce a certain food, if consumers are unlikely to accept that food, then investing in that avenue is probably not worthwhile. So an example I'd like to talk about is making a bread using perennial wheat. And I'm asking the question here, can perennial wheat replace annual wheat? Perennial wheat has many sustainable advantages. Obviously perennial, it can help in soil health by preventing erosion, reduce amounts of machinery in the paddock, reduce periods where fields are less fallow, etc. However, annual wheat has been bred for millennia to make bread, unintended, and other foods such as noodles, pasta, cakes, etc. And so by going for a perennial option, where we've had to incorporate a perennial grass, which hasn't been bred for those properties, do we automatically lose some of those desirable properties of annual wheat for these staple foods? And here are the results from a recent trial we actually conducted with researchers at the New South Wales Department of Primary Industries, who are looking at agronomic factors behind the crop, such as yield, cost effectiveness, etc. So the two samples on the far right show a bread made from traditional annual wheat, whereas the three on the left show bread made from a perennial wheat cultivar. Basically, we were able to use modern tools to measure rheological properties, starch milling, yield, baking performance, etc. And of the 7 lines we tested, at least 3 showed promise as useful alternatives to annual wheat that would be worth investigating from an industry point of view as a potential replacement. So this is all well and good in terms of observable instrumental results, but how can we make sure that we are actually relating this back to human experience? How can we make sure that these outcomes are actually relatable and understandable to us as the consumers of foods? Because we know that we as humans are all individuals, and so our ability to determine sensory intensities is also changeable between us. And so we've got to make sure that these instrumental results actually have true meaning for us as well. So now I'd like to ask the question of you. Firstly, who likes blueberries? Which is a bit of a trick question because everyone likes blueberries. But now I'd like to answer the poll that Courtney has just posted on, do you prefer large or small berries? And so if you're able, please, to sort of quickly answer the poll, and I'll tell you the results of a recent trial that we did, which actually tried to answer this very question. So Courtney, perhaps if you can share the answers when you're ready, please. Without trying to bias the poll, I will tell you that larger berries can usually be bought at a premium. Although I admit I do find it personally a little bit disappointing when you only get a few of them in the punnet, as opposed to many more of the smaller ones. But we did try to use both instrumental and traditional approaches to evaluate differences in quality between them. And so we used a variety of tools to compare them. We used a traditional sensory panel. We used instrumental measurements, colorimeter, e-tongue, refractometer, texture analyzer to try to understand some of the instrumental properties and try to compare how well they corresponded with each other to try to find out the most important factors. So let's have a look at what our outcome was. Panelists found that the smaller berries had a more appealing surface bloom, color, and sweetness level. The e-tongue, electronic tongue, found the smaller berries had a more intense sour taste, have a lower levels of umami and bitter aftertaste. However, our instrumental measurements of firmness, of color, of total sugars, and of pH found no significant differences at all. Our poll results found exactly a 50-50 split between people who prefer large and small berries. And interestingly, this was exactly what our tasting panel found as well. There was no significant difference in the overall liking of the large and small fruit amongst panelists, even though we were able to detect differences in key properties such as sour tastes, for example, as well. So a few final thoughts for today. Despite the fact that we can use instrumental measurements to accurately monitor levels of things such as taste properties, aroma properties, firmness, etc., there's probably still going to be a need for human-based methods for preference, but potentially in the future, maybe not. Perhaps if we could use some of the AI approaches that Dr. Chen previously mentioned, we could actually begin to map consumer preferences with known observable instrumental results and begin even to use these modern technologies even to understand with a strong likelihood of success which foods or which food types are more likely to be favorable for different consumers. Also, there's the possibility to begin to simplify the technologies needed. For example, if we were able to map use of things such as handheld near-infrared devices or sulfur dioxide detecting sensors with more robust methods such as GCMS or electronic tongues, perhaps we could begin to find that the key quantities using more easily applied in the field or lower cost methods that we can then begin to relate back to larger data sets and begin the process of simplifying the technologies that we actually need. And if that was the case, then we could begin to really introduce some real-time quick result testing within food production systems to sort of build up the profile from that point of view. Lastly, I just want to touch on University of Adelaide capabilities. Here we have a very new, very fancy analytical facility established at the Wake campus where I am now. State-of-the-art equipment for analysts of both volatiles and non-volatiles in foods. And also I want to highlight the food product development group we have here, which utilizes new facilities in food preparation, particularly around alternative, plant-based alternatives to traditionally animal-based products. So if you're interested in discussing these concepts further or have ideas for potential collaborations, please feel free to reach out to me. I think the contact details are also going to be posted in the chat. And thanks for the opportunity to speak with you all today.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Wilson. And he provides us lots of new concept for sensory evaluation. Now we open for any comment and the question. Okay, first I would like to know, I have one question there, because you introduced different method, intro method for different analysis. So if one company, they want to analyze something, want to know the shelf life, try to use your method. What will you give some suggestion? What kind of instrument you will suggest? Depends what, yeah, what's the criteria you think is important? Yeah.
Excellent question, Professor Chen. I think to begin with, you probably would need sort of a traditional approach, some sort of descriptive analysis to understand what the key features are for your products. Usually some sort of train panel where you could actually evaluate which features, for example, are the determinants of end of shelf life for that product. Is it an aroma-based issue? Is it a taste-based issue, texture-based issue, etc.? And then depending on the outcomes of that, you would probably need to tailor your instrumental approach to best analyze that feature. So for example, if it was a fruit, where there's a high chance that perhaps the odor would be a key determinant of the end of sensory shelf life for that product, then something like a GCMS approach might be the most useful. But yes, unfortunately, that kind of product, because foods are such a wonderful, varied sort of matrix of different things that we can eat, it's very hard to have like a definitive answer for which technology is the most important. But excellent question.
Any question here? Okay, and I will follow that question, because when we buy some food, this is my own my person question there. When we buy some food, the package say the base buy, right? but after the best by date, how can I decide this food still good or not? Mailing or some testing or something, or there's any good, maybe one day you can suggest some good instrument we can use and cheap. I mean, the price is not that high and can make us to decide, is that still okay to eat? So what is your opinion for that?
Again, another really good question, and quite a difficult one to answer because again, it depends really on the food that we're looking at. So I agree with you. Often, best by or best before dates are set with a large degree of what's the word here? Sort of overcompensation. So in other words, companies want to either make sure that people definitely aren't having a bad food experience, so that they're very conservative with the date they set. In many cases, the foods would actually last quite a bit longer at an acceptable consumer level. They just want to make sure that if, for example, there was a break in the supply chain, in the cool chain, if it's a cold stored food, or in the was exposed to unnecessarily high temperatures, or to, for example, if it's a fruit, if it's exposed to another fruit with high levels of ethylene or something like that, which could impact on the quality. But there are sort of modern techniques that actually occur within the package that are probably some of the most exciting answers for this. So, for example, in New Zealand, scientists developed an ethylene sensor that goes inside, say, a packet of pears, which could actually monitor the levels of ethylene produced by the pear and sort of give you an indication of the potential crunchiness of that fruit. I know of other research around the world where they're, for example, incorporating sensors for known issues with, for example, seafood. We know that production of say, hydrogen sulfide in these types of products is likely to produce a particularly noxious odor that we're unlikely to want to experience. And so again, by incorporating sensors within a pack that can detect low levels of these types of gases, maybe like you could activate some sort of color change on the packaging, which could indicate that the true time that fish is no longer acceptable. So I think from that point of view, in terms of best before dates, probably our most likely avenue would be sort of some sort of packaging base, some sort of active or intelligent packaging design that could communicate that information.
Anyone? Oh, there's one question. Okay, and there's one question here. And determining the shelf life of the meat is very important. Could you elaborate on how consumers can use this product in the future? Do you see this invention affordable to consumers in the future? Yeah.
Another excellent question. I mean, I'll be honest, I think many of these technologies are probably more likely to be used not by the consumer themselves, but by either the companies selling these products or by the retailers selling these products as well. So, for example, in terms of something like meat shelf life, would be governed by the overall shelf life set by the producer of that meat themselves, and by having a more precise understanding of when the end of that shelf life is, we can provide more accurate information to the consumers at the point of sale to better allow them to make choices about is that meat going to suit my conditions. So at this stage, I can't really see this being useful for the consumers, for them to use this type of tool, but I can see it helping producers in particular more accurately set shelf life and extend the availability of foods, because if, for example, we find that the real shelf life of a food is maybe 2 or 3 days longer, that could increase the availability of this food to, say, more regional or harder to access areas. And therefore, for something like fresh produce, for example, that could increase the availability of highly nutritious foods at different times of the year.
There's one more question here. What are some of the barriers identified by your research group in expanding these methods widely by retailers?
Sure. So I'll be honest. A lot of this research is quite at the preliminary stage. We really do need to expand the number of technologies that we test, the number of foods that we test it on, and to sort of cross-check it more thoroughly with consumers and trained panel sensory results. But I think that retailers are very open to options where they are likely to find extended shelf lives for their foods, less likely to have to, for example, discount foods that are already very near the end of shelf life when they reach the store. My belief, the strong belief, is that retailers are very much crying out for options that are more capable of providing precise best before dates for their food products.
Okay, thank you. I think we're running out of time right now, but we will, thank you, Dr. Wilson. And we will move to next section for the open questions. And I will invite all the speakers and the moderators come back. And during this section is not only extending the question or comment to the speakers, we also welcome if you have any suggestion for this webinar or our working group, you can also address it. Yeah, so thank you. Yeah. Anyone? Anyone? Yeah. Okay. Maybe I'm the first one to ask the question, maybe give some comment, because the food security is a big thing. Actually, that contain lots of different topics. Yeah, this is a second seminar. So through the first and second seminar, we almost narrow down to I think the precision farming is quite important, right? Another one is the reduce the food waste. Yeah, so maybe this is to focus on this place. And however, usually we are the researchers, so we doing the research. Most of the time, we just get the data, publish the papers. And I just want to ask all of you, how can you apply your research data or your research finding to the industry or to the farmers? Yeah, and what is the next step for your research? Yeah, maybe I think Dr. Chen may be easy to answer that question. Maybe Dr. Chen first. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Chen. Yeah, thank you for the question. It's very important then when we do our research also to solve some practical need from the farmer side or from the consumers need. So there is like always like when we start research topic, in addition to getting the funding from the agency to provide the financial support, we also like our government also asked us to find the collaborator from the farmer side, so we can apply the funding together. So usually we also will to communicate or have some conversation with farmer or like experimental site openly. So sometimes they will bring us like a more idea, like what's their real need. But actually there are some gaps between their need and advanced technology. Sometimes they only need a very simple technology to solve some simple problem. And we usually are looking for some advanced technology to be developed so we can publish papers. So there will be a gap to bridge these two, how to evaluate their need and also our need together, and then to apply proper technology to this problem and develop suitable tools. Yeah, so that's like from my own experience. It's just trying to talk to the farmers more and knows like what's their needs, but not only listen to one, need to listen to a group because everyone had a different opinion. So when you bring your product to them, they have thousands of comments, which is good or bad. Depends on how do we take them into a serious consideration. Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
But my question is that because you are lucky you got supporting from the government, but if the government did not support this money for the farmers, is it possible for company to use your tool to I mean to earn some money from the get the benefits there? Yeah, because government cannot support everything forever. But they need to have a benefits for the industry. There will the possibility to extend the usage. So what according to your experience, what's your opinion for that? Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's very important. So we also collaborate with some company, like we transfer our technique to them because they think like this is valuable for them. They can make some product or provide some service. Like for the plant disease one, some company will also like get the authorization from us, like have like the patent transfer to them. So they develop some service for the farmer and then combine that with their module together to develop a service so they can sell their modules to monitor, like to do the farm monitoring. And that's like a one possibility. Then they do have doing some similar work with their existing technology. And then also they could use like this system to link with like some company to provide those biological material or like a chemical material. So when they do the detection, they find this one, it also can direct them to the company and then buy that directly. So that's also a possible way to link those business together. And then for the coffee one, actually for some coffee shop, which is like a bigger store or like a chain store, they have the interest to collaborate with us because like they have limited coffee cuppers, but they do have a lot of branches and they want to monitor their qualities more efficiently. So if they have like this system which provide objective outcome or copy report, they also help them to do the quality control. So we do collaborate with like some coffee companies in Taiwan, and then to see if it will help their quality control processes. Yeah.
That's great, Dr. Chen. I think I'll just quickly add to that. You know, we're talking about the role of universities, you know, research agencies and end users, and then the government in supporting that in early stages. And with this, I'm speaking from personal experience, but we've found that there's more and more support for universities to work with end users from earlier on in this process. And if we look at technology adoption in agriculture, for example, you know, a lot of people have been saying there's been barriers there. Why is that? I think a big part of that is that we're not working with the end users at the start. So there's a really strong trend now, and pretty much every research project I'm involved in now has end users involved, either advising what a decision support tool needs to look like or what a design solution needs to look like. And I echo what Dr. Chen says. It's all about providing, you know, a practical solution. And the other thing I would say with that is end users, when you first start talking to them, you can't come with the solution. You need to listen to what the problem is. And often the problem may not even be what they think it is. So it may be something slightly different. So what they're actually looking for and what they need is we need to identify that very clearly early on.
Okay, thank you for the comment. And how about Dr. Wilson? Yeah, you want to give your idea?
No, I'd agree with everything that both Dr. Knowling and Dr. Chen have said. I think that we can't just assume that we have all the solutions. I think in many cases, it is a matter of listening, finding out, and as Dr. Chen said, listening to a variety of voices as well. And yes, I meant to your earlier point though, Professor Chen, around funding. I think it is worth, where possible, to work with companies that are actively involved in the area in which we're researching, because they are the ones that are most likely to have that sort of true understanding of what the most pressing issues are. And I think that in many cases, they can really help us target our research to be the most widely applicable, so that rather than we going to them with what we think the solutions are, if they come to us with their questions, I think often that leads to the best research outcomes for everyone.
Okay, thank you. Actually, there are two questions posted on the Q&A. And the first one is specific to your research areas. What can associations like APRU and the members institution do more of the support, the facilitation of the research collaboration between institutions and the researchers? What type of knowledge sharing opportunities would be helpful for on-the-ground researchers working directly with the local farmers? Okay, who want to answer these questions? Yeah, this is a very big question. Yeah, but who want to answer this first? Yeah.
I'm happy to try.
Okay, thank you.
I think I believe that a sort of a key goal for APRU should be to sort of find out what research is already happening in different parts of the Pacific Rim, and to see how we can sort of begin to start networks where we actually find out what knowledge is already being, going underway at different institutions. I mean, today, for example, it was fascinating to hear what Dr. Chen had to say about different aspects that are ongoing in Taiwan. The way she and her group are working with local farmers was really insightful. But equally, something like that, the fact that she's working on coffee and coffee flavor preference, which is actually something that I've worked on in the past as well, sort of shows that in many cases there are realistic connections that this type of network can help to build up. In terms of actually creating helpful on the ground conditions, I think that's probably sort of a next step. Once we have a more established network, once we have a bit more idea of the capabilities that the different institutions, the different research groups have, then, for example, if there are sort of regional specific problems that we identify where that expertise may be available in other institutions within our group, I think that could become really valuable in terms of helping to solve those problems.
I believe this webinar is a good platform. Yeah, so we can understand each other better. Then we can collaborate maybe in the future. Yeah, because the understanding is the first primary things. Yeah, we need to do right now. So through all the discussion, we know what are you doing and what you're doing. So we can go for next stage. Yeah, and there's a second question here. In SEA countries, there are disease pest identification technologies using smartphones. However, these researchers are expensive. Wow, then pay. Okay, and calling from the social sciences, I would like to know if their kind of researchers need to start from scratch, or could it build up from the research outputs of other researchers? Okay, I think Dr. Chen, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yeah, that's a very smart question. How to build one more effectively. There are actually some open database online. especially for the plant disease identification, actually is widely studied by different area or by different research group. But just maybe some of them are specifically focused in certain crops to collect more comprehensive data set. And for some of them, if they already accumulate enough data and then also develop a certain level of tools, they will open their data set and also put some of their code on the GitHub. So basically, if you are interested in those topics, when you search for a plant disease, we can see some data set from cargoes. There's one open data set or the sharing platform then we can look for. And then also some papers, they will come with the data set and also their code on the GitHub. Then we can refer to. So that's one possibility. Then if we don't collect the data by ourselves, we can getting or obtain some material from those online resources. But just to make sure you receive a correct data, because you need a correct data as a fundamental for your model training. So based on what other research already done, and then if they already publish a paper, so they might be more convincing or already been confirmed by other expertise. Yeah.
Thank you. I would like to continue that question. Actually, we know there's a lot of database in different places. However, that's very difficult to connection because the system difference or the data source difference. So for your opinion, there's a possible to break the barrier, become the system difference. Yeah, not only because if we can collect more data, they can increase your accuracy. So that's quite important. Yeah. So what's your opinion for that? Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Chen. It's a very excellent question. It's about a data format and the requirement. It's a big topic, not only just for images, it's for all the sensor data collection, because not only for image, for other humidity, temperature, illumination, that's all the sensings, all the research teams collect their own data. However, their data cannot share with each other because they have a different format that collect from different sensor company. So there are some standards that should be developed, or we say actually they are already developed. Just people need to follow those standards to give a proper data format. So we could make those data to be shareable to each other, and then those data could accumulate to the real effective big data, not only just the numbers, not informations like that. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you for Dr. Chen's suggestion. Actually, because of time limitation, I have to stop the discussion right now. And today we have delved into two critical issues concerning food security, precision farmer, and extending food shelf life. This discussions not only broaden our understanding, but also open door for future collaboration among the universities. I extend my gratitude to all the speakers, Dr. Chen and Dr. Wilson, and the moderator and Dr. Knowling, for their valuable contributions. And before I close the webinar, I also be happy to announce the third food security webinar series will take place on June 20 for colleagues in North America. You can see the slide here. And North America, and on June 21 for colleagues in Asia and the South Pacific. If you have any question regarding the webinar series, please feel free to contact Professor King through his email. Okay, so now I close the section and wish all of you have the excellent day ahead and goodbye. Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.